The Gerudo, a tribe that only consists of women who live in the desert region of Hyrule Kingdom. They have been around since very early on in Hyrule's history. But how does a tribe of only women live for so many generations? To be more specific, how do the Gerudos have babies without, any male Gerudos to procreate with? In Breath of the Wild, that can all be explained as the game goes into greater detail on how Gerudo women seek out a mate to reproduce, as they even take a class on it. And what we can gather from Breath of the Wild is while the Gerudo must seek a male outside their tribe who is a Hylian, their offspring will only be born as a female and heavily take after their mother, making them also a Gerudo instead of a Hylian. Though while it's guaranteed their children will be female and heavily resemble their mothers, they have seemed to adapt one thing from mixing together with Hylians, that being their elf-like pointy ears. As during Ocarina of Time's era, the Gerudo had normal ears, but most likely throughout the many years of mixing between the two races, they have adapted Hylian ears as shown in Breath of the Wild's time. Or the fact that they now accept Hylia as their goddess, their ears became pointed, similar to her kind. As Ganondorf's ears seem to have changed over time after gaining access to the Triforce. But that wasn't always the case for the Gerudo. As before Breath of the Wild's time, they didn't share the pointed ears. And overall, the history of their people most likely followed other ways in order to pass on to each generation. With Breath of the Wild being at the very end of the timeline, compared to their early history, the Gerudo have made peace with the Kingdom of Hyrule, uniting together and having a Gerudo woman as one of the 4 champions, along with the fact of their kind being friendly with other races, allowing females who aren't Gerudo to enter their town. And Gorons for some reason. But before this time of peace and unity, the Gerudo were seen much differently throughout Hyrule's history. They were known to capture any outsiders and keep them as prisoners, being much more enclosed than what they are now, and because of it were given a bad reputation throughout Hyrule. A tribe that was known as thieves, pirates, and most of all, the race of the Demon King. So let's jump back into the origins of the tribe and see how they evolved over time. While we know the Gerudo tribe to be a race of only females, that wasn't always the case. Obviously, we all know Ganondorf was also Gerudo, being born in the era of Ocarina of Time, before becoming the Demon King that plagues Hyrule till this day. During that time, according to Gerudo legend, a male would be born every 100 years. This male would be crowned as the leader of the Gerudo, becoming their king and commanding their tribe as his own. But after the rise of Ganondorf, that legend had stopped. Ganondorf was born into the Gerudo and taken care of by his 2 mothers, the pair of 400-year-old witches that were known as Kotake and Kome. And similar to their son, Ganondorf, they had green skin, which was unlike the normal Gerudo. And while it's unclear on who Ganondorf's father was, it must have been the previous Gerudo male born 100 years prior. But what we do know is that the pair of witches are known to be the surrogate mothers of Ganondorf. How both of them are his mother raises questions. We can only assume that they gave birth to him in their twin Rova form, as they are able to fuse into one. Or they could just be his adopted mothers, and that fact was lost in translation, as I don't think Nintendo thought this deeply about it. The twins had secretly led the Gerudo tribe before Ganondorf was born, in which they would then let Ganondorf lead the Gerudo and become their servants as he rose to power. So yes, you're hearing this right. Ganondorf had 2 mothers, who later became his servants. Talk about a weird childhood. While not all the Gerudo followed their wicked ways, they would kidnap and brainwash those Gerudo women to work for them, turning them into servants like the Iron Knuckles as they served their evil ways. So similar to Ganondorf, They were far more evil than the race was known for, even willing to use their kind as slaves. But unlike normal Gerudo, they all shared evil magic that made him far stronger than an average Gerudo. But even before Ganondorf gained his power, while he was still the king of Gerudo, he did nothing but hurt his own kind. Born by a pair of horrible witches who brought evil even before Demise's curse could awaken in their son. For being the destined male to rule his people, Ganondorf was so ruthless even his most loyal followers couldn't bear to stand by him. One of those women was a fierce warrior known as Niburu. She was Ganondorf's second in command. With how horrible Ganondorf was, she couldn't continue to follow his sick and twisted ways. But with the help of Ganondorf's mothers, they prevented her from doing anything until Link was able to save her, awakening her as the Gerudo Sage. From there, she was able to join Link in sealing Ganondorf for the first of many times to come. But outside the killing and controlling of the Gerudo, Ganondorf's terror didn't stop there. Of course, with him being Demise's chosen one, he eventually set out to Hyrule Kingdom to awaken his true power. This led to the raid on Hyrule Castle, which forced Princess Zelda to escape and teach Link to open the Door of Time, as he must awaken as Hyrule's hero. But in doing so, this also gave Ganondorf access to the Triforce, giving him his power to rule Hyrule until Link was able to seal him with the help of Zelda and the Seven Sages. And from that time on, the Gerudo tried to distance themselves from Ganondorf, no longer crowning the destined-born male as king, and in general, never giving an opportunity like that. So what happened to that destined male set to be born every 100 years after Ganondorf? Well, outside of the obvious reasons that their last male king, Ganondorf, is the sole reason Hyrule is destined to be doomed again and again, with his spirit returning to take over and destroy its land, it made sense why that law of crowning the male as ruler stopped. But then what happens to the other males born each 100 years? Well, from what we know, the only Gerudo male known throughout Hyrule's history was Ganondorf, but after his rise to becoming Hyrule's biggest threat, the women of the Gerudo decided to not associate with him and even despise the fact that he is one of their kind. So ever since then, there has been no record of a Gerudo male being birthed within their tribe, not even every 100 years. And while this reason has never been explained to us, I think we know the answer, regardless of how dark it may sound. The legend of the Gerudo Male remains a mystery ever since Ganondorf's rise and fall. The reason for this is most likely because with Ganondorf's body still remaining, the Gerudo are unable to give birth to a new male as according to their legend. So with keeping Ganondorf's original body sealed, it means Ganondorf cannot be reincarnated into a new male or enter his original body. Or a less likely theory is that if the Gerudo still do give birth to males, they just no longer crown it as its king, or outright get rid of the male from their tribe. Regardless, with Ganondorf's body still remaining, it denies him from ever being reborn. Similar to how both Link and Zelda are reborn again and again throughout Hyrule. As their spirits pass down when they die to a new reincarnation, with Ganondorf never fully dying, he is unable to be reincarnated into a new. This explains why Ganondorf was never killed off or could even be killed. As Demise's curse, he was able to even break away from the sage's punishment, before sending him to the Twilight. So most likely the Sheik are the ones who devised the plan to keep Ganondorf's body sealed underneath Hyrule Castle until Breath of the Wild 2's events. And since his body still remains, the Gerudo are most likely unable to give birth to another male into their tribe. So because of this, the Gerudo started procreating with the Hylians, which is why their ears changed over time. As before Ganondorf, they most likely only procreated with the one destined Gerudo male, keeping their kind to only be Gerudo, not mixing with the Hylians. But since that legend came to end, they were forced to seek males elsewhere, it being the Hylians. And this would explain why Ganondorf returns to his original body every time he comes back, as he was never given a chance to be reborn like the other Triforce wielders, Link and Zelda, only allowing his body to be a vessel for him to return in. This may also explain why his body remained sealed underneath Hyrule Castle for tens of thousands of years, as sealing his original body would also prevent his spirit from entering it, which would help explain why Calamity Ganon and his phantoms heavily used Sheikah tech throughout their bodies, as Ganondorf's spirit was using whatever it can in order to be reincarnated. But with his remains sealed away and no Gerudo Male to take over, he's forced to become the monster we see in Breath of the Wild, Calamity Ganon. And this all leads us to when Link and Zelda find Ganondorf's corpse within Breath of the Wild's 2 teaser, as whatever or whoever removed the seal on Ganondorf's body finally gave him a chance to re-enter his corpse once again. After 10,000 years of having no host for him, he finally regained his original body. This theory would explain the reason why the legend of the Gerudo Male has been absent since Ganondorf's birth, and why Ganondorf was never able to be reincarnated like his Triforce-wielding counterparts, making his spirit wander and even create the abomination we know as Calamity Ganon in order to make a return as prophesized. But now all of this seems to be coming to an end, as Ganondorf seems to have gotten access to his body once more. And most likely we will learn all about this dark and twisted past within Breath of the Wild sequel. But looking back from Ocarina of Time's era all the way to Breath of the Wild's, the Gerudo have made a ton of progress throughout Hyrule's history. From being known as the enclosed race that worshipped the one male born into their tribe, they have now moved past all of that and operate on their own, while seeking Hylian males to procreate. Granted, not all Gerudo look for just a male to procreate with, as some seek true love and even get married. But regardless of what family they start, their offspring will most likely end up being a female and resembling their mothers, making their race remain as a female-only tribe. But in a world where talking fishmen, birdmen, and rockmen exist, their race of Amazonian women doesn't seem that bizarre. It's still an odd concept, but it's nice to see Nintendo give a deeper meaning to their kind throughout the years, unlike how they were portrayed in earlier titles as just bandit thieves, who happen to be the same race of the Demon King. Now the Gerudo have become united with the rest of Hyrule and a part of their people. But what do you guys think of this theory? Please let me know in the comments below and leave a like if you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to subscribe as I got tons more videos like this on the way. As always, I've been ZeldaMaster. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.